I'm in Peru traveling down one of the most remote stretches of the Amazon. My destination is the historic city of Iquitos, which grew incredibly rich a century ago during the Amazon's rubber boom. Today, it's the biggest city in the world that you can't drive to, marooned in the middle of the jungle. Getting there isn't easy, but it's definitely going to be a great adventure. My journey starts from Yurimaguas, at the end of Peru's road network. Traveling downriver for days through the jungle, I finally arrive in the remote city of Iquitos before returning upriver to the spectacular Pacaya Samiria National Reserve to search for rare wildlife. Situated on the edge of the Amazon rainforest, Yurimaguas is a busy frontier town with a population of around 50,000 people. There's plenty of noisy traffic here, but happily I won't be seeing any more of that for a while. Gracias. But we also get a couple of tantalizing glimpses of the unique and rarely seen pink river dolphin, which is found only here in the Amazon. Oh, there's a pink one. Out of nowhere, a pink one. Right there. As we travel downriver, most of the time we're surrounded by jungle. But throughout the day, we continue to pass a number of remote villages. Usually we carry on by, only stopping at the larger villages, where there's enough cargo to be taken on and off our boat so as to make stopping worthwhile.
Can crash with sandbank, you know. Right. So that's the reason we just leave the boat move by the current. Yeah. That's the experience of the boat driver, yeah.
So we already left a day late, and now this fog, it probably means significant delays?
A couple hours at least, yeah, or more maybe. If the weather continues, it could be another day. Yeah.
Another day. So this is like the definition of you have to go with the flow, right?
Yes.
It's a whole philosophy around this trip. We've come into shore again. They're not comfortable being in the middle of the river.
Because if you go in the middle, it's so foggy, so you can be lost sometimes.
Lost?
Yeah, lost. Yeah.
Not lost. I mean, can't you just go downriver?
Sometimes when you are not looking the bank, you cannot see the direction.
Yeah.
So maybe you think that it's maybe on the left, you can go on the left, but sometimes doing a circle.
Oh,
maybe you can be going upstream again.
Oh, this is getting more complicated. So it's better we just stay close to shore.
Close to shore, not so faster, so slowly. Yeah.
No drama.
No drama, yeah.
Okay.
We stay becalmed in the fog for a couple of hours or so, but then the heat of the day gradually kicks in and the sun burns it off. Luckily, we haven't been delayed too long and should still be able to reach Iquitos tonight. Before we get there, however, our long journey downriver has finally reached a pivotal moment.
In this river that we are leaving behind, that is the Marañón River. That river that you can see, that is the Ucayali River. We are exactly here in the confluence of the two rivers that forms the mighty Amazon.
So this is it. This is the spot.
This is it.
This is where it begins officially.
Yes.
How far to the Atlantic?
About 2,000 miles to the Atlantic Ocean.
Unbelievable. It's a huge amount of water. I read somewhere that if you added up the next 8 biggest rivers in the world, all of the water in those rivers, it wouldn't equal the amount of water in the Amazon.
Yes.
Is that true?
That. Yes.
It's astonishing.
The main reason for the extraordinary amount of water in the Amazon is, of course, rain.
The rainy season has just begun here. This storm behind me may or may not catch up with us, but if it does, look out, because when it rains here, it pours.
As it turns out, we escaped the rain for now. With just a few hours to go before we get to Iquitos, I used the time to get up to speed with the city's remarkable history just over a century ago, when it was at the center of the Amazon's rubber boom. It's an amazing story. A few rubber barons, it seems, became incredibly rich selling natural rubber to the world. As the best quality rubber could only be obtained from trees growing in the Amazon, the region's rubber came to be worth a fortune once bicycles, motorcycles, and cars were invented, all running on millions of rubber tires. How ironic that today Iquitos is the biggest city in the world that you can't even drive to.
After so much time on the river, I'm excited to almost be in Iquitos. Another hour or so and we'll be docking. And I want to figure out more about the rubber boom history here, because after all, that's why such a huge city exists in the middle of the jungle.
Finally, we see the lights of Iquitos in the distance. Remarkably, despite being so isolated in the jungle, hundreds of miles from the nearest connecting road, the great city we're about to arrive in has a population of around 500,000 people.
We are sliding right in.
Pues algo de Parinari. Yo estaba cogiendo ese guayo arriba.
¡Maná, turista! Todo, todo! Oh, yes. A ver, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, $10.
Dile que tú vas a escoger.
Gracias. Eso es mío, falta de él. Falta de él.
Listen to the sound of that rain. It is pouring out, but that I expect. I am in the middle of the rainforest, but what I didn't expect was what my hotel looks like. I mean, check this out. This is rubber boom era money at its finest. These got these huge high ceilings and chandeliers. And the tiling down here is gorgeous. It's inside and outside, and it was all imported from Europe at great expense way back then. But the real kicker is right here, this bed. As much as I loved my hammock on board, I was pretty happy to see this last night.
With its population of around 500,000, Iquitos today is bigger than ever. But its heyday was undoubtedly during the rubber boom in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Back in the old days, when all the world's motor vehicles so badly needed the Amazon's natural rubber, Iquitos grew hugely wealthy from the rubber trade. And today, all the grandest and most beautiful buildings in Iquitos date back to that time. Inspiration for the 1980s movie Fitzcarraldo.
One of the interesting things about Fitzcarraldo was he was looking for an area to tap rubber that hadn't been exploited beforehand, and he knew of an area, but it wasn't accessible by a river that he knew of. So what he did was, he hauled his ship over a mountain. In the movie, they dragged the entire ship over the mountain. In real life, he took the ship apart. He enlisted a large number of indigenous people, and by enlisted, I mean he had rifles and threatened them with death, and a number of people died in doing that. But he was able to get the ship in pieces over the mountain, and then from there, he found a river route to bring the rubber down to Iquitos, to where it was shipped out to Europe and the United States.
So it was a success.
I don't think the indigenous people would see it that way, but for Fitzcarraldo it was, and he made a fortune.
Carlos Fitzcarraldo was very wealthy, but the richest rubber baron in Iquitos was probably Julio Arana. A handful of the hundreds of steamboats that once hauled rubber along the Amazon to and from Iquitos still survive. Thankfully, Dr. Richard Bodmer, an Iquitos-based conservationist, has helped preserve some of the last remaining steamboats. He's turned one into a historic boats museum.
This is Ayapur. Ayapur was built in Hamburg, Germany in 1906. What happened during the rubber boom is that the rubber barons had so much money. Every time this boat would go out for 1 month collecting rubber, it would come back with about $2 million in today's value in its hull.
2 million. Oh my gosh.
And so that's how lucrative it was. So they were able to buy the top of the line boats, the best boats built.
None of this could have happened without the steamboat, correct?
That's right. None of this. Because the currents of the river are so strong that you couldn't go upriver without the steamboats. And when they first came in the 1850s, everything changed here.
Right.
And for the first time, you could have commercial activities in the Amazon. The steamboats built Iquitos.
Given the time of year, we have to clamber down to where the Ayapua is beached in the mud. But with the rainy season begun and the Amazon just starting its annual rise of more than 30 feet, it won't be long before the area floods and the Ayapua floats again.
This old helm of the Ayapur was many of its original features. Over here we have a whole steam horn. Every time the Ayapur would come back to port, it would let everybody know that it's full of rubber. And so they'd blow the horn. So please, if you'd like to blow the horn.
Give it a go
Give
here.
it a go.
It's a nice sound. Sound of rubber money, huh?
That's a rubber money. So here's a little exhibit on the Ayapur. You can see how they're loading up rubber onto the Ayapur.
Those are the rubber balls?
That's right. They would weigh about 50 kilograms each. And you'd put them in the hull of the boat because that's where you want the weight.
It's much fancier than I expected. It's a working boat, right? I expected it to be a little bit more, I don't know, austere or something.
Yeah, it has been restored a little bit, and this would have been the area actually where they would have kept the wood for the boiler. That's why in the Amazon you find that towns are very evenly spaced. And those towns are evenly spaced because that was a collection point for the timber.
Like getting their gas tanks refilled.
That's right. So this whole river would have been filled with timber in order to make it to the next point.
Can't run out.
That's right. If you run out, that's what you call running out of steam.
Yeah. There you have it.
Lots of working boats ferried rubber to Iquitos and the world beyond. But the really hard work was done by the tappers who collected the rubber out in the jungle.
Here we can also see the different utensils used by the rubber tappers. For example, how they cut the trees. Here we have a few small rubber balls. Putumayo River, where atrocities were discovered against the indigenous people. And it was on the Putumayo where you had the rubber baron Arana.
Oh yes, I've heard about him.
And there was a Canadian traveler, Hardenberg, who went down the Putumayo. He discovered that employees of Arana were mistreating the indigenous people. And there you can see he's a photograph of indigenous people in shackles when they enslaved them. And he reported whippings and actually burning people alive and killing people.
Did it change anything?
Peruvians investigated, and the British investigated because the company was registered on the British stock market. When they investigated, they had a court case in London. The result of the court case was Julio Rana was found guilty, but he was only fined 1 penny.
Justice not served then.
I'm interested to hear the native people's side of the story. Visitors today. Benefiting from the proximity of Iquitos, the Bora make a decent living putting on dance shows for tourists who, like us, come to visit them from the big city.
But Tennessee, America, Parliament, Natio, Bora, America, Parliament. And it's my son, Pasi, James, Peru. We are Katie, and they have what he made P to make. Then I call me, then Marky, see what my pocket taste.
Is there any personal stories from Raphael's great-grandfather or something that he might know?
Hay en el lugar donde que está ahí en el Caquetá, hay todavía dice donde que quemaban a los nativos hay todavía ahí como grasas de ser humano así, y está brillante, y encontrás como un lugar encantado ahí, es el lugar de ahí. Nosotros al ver el tronco, la chiringa, el caucho, siempre nosotros a veces al cortar el tronco, y pensamos en ese momento de cómo sufrían y cómo trabajaban. Algunas personas paleado, algunas personas cortado.
This was Arana's men who did this.
Ah, claro, Arana, claro.
And are there any rubber trees around here?
¿Hay troncos de chiringa cerca de aquí?
Sí. Es que no.
Can I look at one? Yeah?
Tenemos uno cerca nomás. Si usted gusta, podemos ir.
Sí,
ver.
¿es posible?
Sí,
Sí, ok.
Vamos.
What is rubber tree in the local language?
Kumu.
Kuma.
Amo.
Anya.
En la antigüedad dice la historia que ha sido una mujer que tenía 3 hijos. La historia dice que la mamá se convirtió en un tronco y los niños cuando estaban amarcando a su mamá quedaron arriba. Al transformarse en tronco se quedó arriba y los hijos no podían bajarse hacia la tierra. Entonces lloró la mamá y las lágrimas de la mamá que fue esto. Y por ahí bajaron sus hijos a la tierra. Por eso se dice el árbol que llora, pues esto de acá.
Hard to believe this is what it was all about, all the bloodletting. It was about this quiet white liquid that's dripping over here. Liquid gold.
It really is shocking to think how badly the indigenous people were abused during the short 30-year span of the rubber boom. Many thousands suffered and died. Today, the beautiful old buildings of Iquitos are the rubber barons' most obvious legacy. But for the all too many workers who were enslaved and abused to make the rubber barons rich, the collapse of the rubber boom couldn't come soon enough.
The rubber boom ended in 1912, but the beginning of the end was some 35 years earlier when the British smuggled 70,000 rubber tree seeds out of the region. They took them to Malaysia and started plantations. Now, compared to here, where trees were scattered all over the forest, plantations were easy to manage and had a much bigger yield. So it took a few decades for those trees to mature, but when they did, the market here evaporated. Prices plummeted by 90%, and the Amazonian rubber boom was over. Buildings like the one behind me, never built again.
It's now time for me to move on from Iquitos. For the last part of my Amazon River adventure, I've joined up again with conservationist and historic boat enthusiast Dr. Richard Bodmer for an expedition deep into the remote heart of the jungle, where he's helping to conserve the region's spectacular wildlife. From Iquitos, we're heading 100 miles or so back upriver to the vast Pacaya Samiria National Reserve, where we're joining Richard's research team on the Samiria River. At the mouth of the Samiria River, Richard's historic research vessel, the Clavero, is waiting for us.
Hola. Just hop off, huh?
Get on the Clavero.
Hola, mucho gusto.
Hola.
Holly, nice to meet you. These are my quarters. I love all this wallpaper. All right. Heading deep into the National Reserve.
Built in France for the Peruvian Navy back in 1876, the Clavero is incredibly historic. Originally used to explore and defend the country's Amazonian frontier during the rubber boom, today it's said to be the oldest boat still navigating the Amazon. As the largest protected area of seasonally flooded forest anywhere in the Amazon, the Pacaya Samiria National Reserve is a vital refuge for many animal species that depend on this unique habitat. Around 50,000 indigenous people also live in the reserve, allowed to hunt and fish on their traditional lands in return for helping co-manage and preserve the wildlife. One such co-management project Richard is helping with is the conservation of the reserve's turtle population.
We'll check in with the park guide here and arrange things for the release of the baby turtles that have recently hatched from the artificial beach that they have here.
From the guard station, we collect nearly 1,000 baby turtles that are now old enough to be released into the wild. To take them upriver to the designated release spot, we're using the Clavero's small launch.
So this is a good place to release the turtles.
Okay.
So we can start.
Yeah, how do we do it?
Might be easier to lift a whole bucket up.
Okay. Should we do that? No, that's right. Thank
We
you.
have a
Thank
lot
you
of
very
turtles
much.
to release here.
Look at that. Oh, they're excited.
So go ahead and grab a turtle and put it in the water, and it swims away.
There's over 900 of them.
Yes.
Big job.
976, I think.
976. They aren't hunted as adults, are they?
In the past they were, but now for the people to get involved with the turtle program, they can no longer hunt the adults and they can no longer take the eggs. If the local people are taking care of the environment, are taking care of the endangered species and the forest, then they're allowed to sell some of these baby turtles in the pet market. And that gives them an economic incentive to do all that conservation. It's been very successful for the local people and particularly successful for these river turtles.
Oh, okay.
So in 8 years' time, these turtles are going to start to reproduce, and then you're going to have larger numbers here.
It's nice to have a good news environmental story coming out of the Amazon. I mean, this is 976 little bits of potential swimming
right.
off into their future.
That's right. Each one baptized by Holly.
Yeah.
It's the last morning of my trip through the Peruvian Amazon, and I wake up to a spectacular sight. Swimming all around the boat are lots of the rare and unique pink dolphins, which I only got tantalizing glimpses of earlier in my trip.
The full jungle experience has really come to life. You can hear the dolphins rising and blowing, and the birds are just everywhere. It's truly amazing.
It's time to leave the Clavero behind to start my long return journey home. But Richard says we've got one last chance to see some more pink dolphins back at the mouth of the Samiria River. There's often a lot of fish at the confluence, so it's a favorite place for the dolphins to feed. As it turns out, we're really in luck.
Oh, there's another two.
Oh yeah, look at that. Oh my gosh, they're beautiful.
Oh, look at that strange behavior. You see that tail, how it's moving? That's very rare, very rare. That's dolphins mating. And we only really see it at the mouth here during this season. And you can see how they're just moving around, the tail's coming up and they're rolling their bodies over there. That's really interesting, really rare to see.
What an unbelievable way to end my trip. Mating pink dolphins. Now there's something I wasn't expecting to see.
My journey down the Amazon has been kind of epic. First making it all the way to Iquitos, then experiencing the jungle and all its crazy biodiversity and majesty. And I've loved exploring the human drama, last century's rubber boom, and today's interface of people and the environment. The Amazon is truly a unique place, and I feel lucky to have gotten even a glimpse of it.